Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Joanne. I am the Learner Lawyer. I hope you're all doing well. I'm sorry my virtual background's not doing very well. My computer's not really happy either. So, if you're happy and you know it, that's not my computer. Hopefully this is all working and you can hear me and everything is going well. Uh, Look, thank you for joining me. I want to talk about this defamation case that was ruled on yesterday. It was quite bizarre, and I, wanted to talk about that and talk about what we know. And really, this is a case that Ben Roberts Smith brought, and some would say it was a little bit foolish. I think hindsight's a really good thing. The media won. I guess when we look at it, it's a very interesting situation that we now have. And on the other hand, we've got really, really weird behaviour from Katie Joy over the fact about the docuseries that I think it's on Amazon. For me, look, if it was me, I'd be happy that the series was happy, but she's in it, from what I've seen, she's really given a hard time to the people that have spoken out, and anybody that speaks out needs to be protected. And so anyway, so we've got a few things to talk about. I have exams next week, Monday and Tuesday. I'm not really looking forward to them. The in-person exams, crammed in some rooms, and I'm not happy about it because we've just hit winter. Winter comes cold and flu, and also that C word. And the school that I work at has just has a wave been hit. So let's have a look. So I've gone to the conversation, which is an independent paper. So this, we're going to look at an article from yesterday, and then we're going to go and have a look at some other stuff. So Ben Roberts Smith is a Victoria Cross recipient. He was deemed a war hero. And in 2018, there was a series of articles that came out that questions this and accused him of committing war crimes in Afghanistan. He sued the papers and the journalists for defamation. And it was a case that took 110 days, 40 odd witnesses. It was interesting. A lot of those were protected under pseudonyms because they were either military people, ex-military people. So there was also national security that had to be protected. And that's why the written ruling has not been released yet, because the federal government, the Commonwealth, asked the judge for leave to be able to look over the judgment and make sure that there is no sensitive or secure information in the judgment. Now, he did release an redacted copy that would have it all. That was only for certain people. So again, it's really unusual that the judgment is sealed until a certain date. So on that day, come Monday, the public and everybody will get to see the copy that's been provided, or the public copy. So that's where we are. Now, the other interesting thing is that Robert Smith was in Bali at the time of his judgment, and he's also announced today that he's resigning from his position, which ironically was for a media outlet, one of the opposing media outlets. So it's also come out that Channel 7 was paying for his legal fees. That's caused a bit of an uproar. as well. So there's been just a whole pile of interesting stuff. So let's have a look at this. So let me pull this up for you. Oh, so this is called A Win for the Press, a Big Loss for Roberts Smith. What does it mean? Okay, so it was a spectacular defamation case. I believe that media outlets over the world are also reporting on this because it is, as I said, one that has more far-reaching ramifications because there are lots of questions as to whether there can be criminal charges laid, whether the military gets to lay them. There's calls for his awards to be taken off him. There's calls for, yeah, so it's opened up a great big can of worms. Okay, so at the heart of the spectacular defamation trial brought by the decorated Australian soldier, Ben Roberts Smith, and he was decorated, were two key questions. Had the Age, the Sydney Morning Herald and Canberra Times damaged his reputation when they published an article in 2018, a series of explosive stories accusing him of murder and other war crimes while in Afghanistan? And could the newspapers successfully defend their reporting as true? Well, Federal Court Justice Anthony Buzanko found the newspapers were indeed able to establish the substantial truth of key allegations around the killing of an unarmed Afghan male prisoner. Now, here is the difference between defamation or civil cases and criminal cases. So in criminal cases, we have beyond reasonable doubt. You have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that something happened. In civil cases, particularly in tort law, which defamation comes under, you have to prove the balance of probability. What is it probable? Could it be probable that this occurred? And so one of their defenses was substantial truth. So was it probable, the balance of probability? And he said, well, yes, there is enough evidence to show that. An appeal may still be on the cards, but this is a high-profile loss for a very prominent person. The costs will be substantial. The usual rule is that the losing party pays their own costs and those of the winning party. So even though people say defamation law in Australia has a reputation for favouring plaintiffs, this case shows even the plaintiffs do sometimes lose defamation cases in Australia. More broadly, this case shows how hard it is to use defamation law to repair any perceived damage to your reputation. Once a case begins, you will never control what is said in court. And that was the thing. Once he went down this path, there was no going back at all. So the case centered on several defamatory meanings, or as they're known in defamation law, imputations, that Robert Smith said the papers made against him. Among those that he'd killed, and look, this video is going to go orange, so that's okay, an Afghan male prisoner, and ordered junior soldiers to execute others in Afghanistan between 2006 and 2012. Robert Smith denied any wrongdoing, but the papers had pled a defence of truth. That means to win this case, they needed to prove the meanings conveyed by their reporting, or even if those meanings were unintended, were true. For other imputations, Buzanko found the newspaper were able to establish contextual truth. So substantial truth means what it sounds like, that the allegation published was in substance true. Defamation law does not require strict, complete, or absolute accuracy. Minor or inconsequential errors of detail are relevant. What matters is, has the publisher established what they published in substance was true? Now, contextual truth is a fallback defense. The court has to weigh what has been found to be true against what was found to be unproven. If the true statements about the plaintiff were worse than the unproven statements, then the plaintiff's report reputation was not overall damaged by the unproven statements, and the publisher has a complete defense. In other words, Buzanko found most of the imputations to be true, and when considered against those that were not proven to be true, the remaining unproven imputations did damage his reputation. So the court had several explosive claims during the course of the trial, including that evidence on USB sticks had been put into a lunchbox and buried in the backyard, that Robert Smith had allegedly punched a woman in their hotel room. I think they also interviewed his ex-wife. His side tried to make her out to be vindictive, but there was also DV claims in there. So there were so many things that came out in this trial that I'm certain that he really would not have wanted to come out, but they have all come out, and they're not pretty claims. Robert Smith said he didn't bury any USBs or withhold information from a war crimes inquiry, and denied that he punched a woman. But the fact that this widely scrutinised case yielded such astonishing testimony day in and day out shows how risky it is to use defamation law to receive perceived injury to one's reputation. Defamation law is seeking to correct people's views about the plaintiff, but it's open to doubt that defamation law is actually any good at securing its own stated purpose of changing people's mind about the plaintiff. The problem is the law is a very blunt instrument. It's very hard to get people to change their minds about what they think of you. All litigation involves risks, and defamation trials are even riskier. You can never control what comes out in court. On a side note, this is Arthur Moses. He is Gladys Berejiklian's lawyer. And I think this is Paul Silva behind him as well. And he was Barilaro's lawyer, by the way. Robert Smith has sued to protect his reputation, but in doing so, a range of adverse things have been said in court. And whatever is said in court is covered by the defense of absolute privilege. And you can't sue for defamation for anything said in court that is reported accurately and fairly. And this is the issue. You can't sue for things that are said in court because it's absolute privilege. So those witnesses were under oath. The law that applies in the Robert Smith case, defamation law, we had before the major laws were introduced in July 2021 across most of Australia. These reforms included a new defence, such as the public interest defence, which is really interesting because they believe that they probably still would have been able to. Lawyers have pondered about whether it would have been a stronger public interest defence. It would have been a public interest defence. They probably could have used that. These reforms introduced to use this defence, the publisher has to demonstrate that they reasonably believe the matter covered in their published material is of public interest. As this defence didn't exist prior to 2021, the publishers in the Robert Smith case used the defence of truth. If a case like this were litigated today following these reforms, it is highly likely that the publisher would have used the new public interest defence. Given Murdoch versus Crikey case was settled, we may yet wait some time to see what's required to satisfy the public interest defence. But what was shown in the court is that sometimes truth alone will prevail. As I said, they went and they called all these witnesses to prove their case. And because they were investigative journalists, they had some evidence. So this is the next article here. dismissed legal expert explains the judgment in the defamation case. So let's see if we can break this down a bit. So this is written by Ricardo, a senior lecturer of law, University of South Australia, and an emeritus professor of law and criminal justice. So don't forget, Robert Smith is Australia's most decorated former living former SAS soldier, and he brought the defamation case. So the civil trial ended in July 2022 after 110 days of evidence and legal submissions. It was interrupted, of course, by COVID. So in his judgment, the judge said he was satisfied the most serious imputations were proven on the balance of probabilities, which is the test in civil cases. This includes allegations. I'm not going to do them again, but there were some pretty horrific allegations in there. So he also found that papers established substantial truth in the allegations revolving a man with a prosthetic leg. So one of them was about a prisoner in a cliff. Further claims were made that Robert Smith had forced a young recruit to execute an unarmed elderly man and deemed it bloody. All these allegations were particularly galling to a man who'd been awarded the Medal of Gallantry for his actions in Afghanistan, the Victoria Cross, and Commendation for Distinguished Services for his outstanding leadership in a more than 50 high-risk operation in 2012. Yes, it's really quite shocking when you think that he's got all those decorations. So some of the other allegations was that the newspapers alleged he bullied, harassed, intimidated soldiers. The judge found the allegations of bullying to be substantially true, but did not find that the newspapers had established substantial truth in the DV allegations. The allegations of DV and threats were held to warrant the defence of contextual truth. Given that the newspaper had proved the most serious allegations were true, they could rely on the defence of contextual truth. That meant that Bezenko was satisfied that the DV allegations would not further harm Robert Smith's reputation, even though those claims weren't proven to be substantially true. These contextual truth changes came in a push to have uniformity in defamation laws back in 2005. According to Australian common law, a statement is defamatory if it exposes a person to hatred, contempt, or ridicule, or would tend to make a right-minded observer shun or avoid that person. Saying a decorated soldier is a war criminal invariably drew the papers deep into potentially defamatory territory. The papers had to establish a defence, and their defence was that all they reported were true. Under the law, they only needed to show the substantial truth of what they had alleged. The defendant is thus given some leeway. They do not prove every last item is completely true. Because the papers were able to establish the substantial truth of key aspects of the reporting, Robert Smith case failed. Robert Smith's lawyers were funded by Seven West Media chairman Kerry Stokes, claimed that some of the witnesses' testimonies could not be relied upon. In one case, the lawyers argued this was because the claims were framed in jealousy and was based on an obsession with their leader. And in another case, the witnesses were fabulists and fantasists. However, the imputations supported by the oral evidence of nearly all of the witnesses were to be held to be reliable by Bezenko. So while they were trying to say that witnesses were not reliable, every witness, they were getting the same story. So if every witness is telling the same story, surely that you'd have to say that there was some sort of believability to that. So it's now up to the judge in a further hearing to determine how much the newspapers will be able to claim back from Robert Smith. The newspapers requested 3 weeks to consider how much to seek for costs from third party. There's little doubt both sides have spent, hello Vedandra, both spent millions on their respective legal teams, and the issues of costs may prove just as interesting for observers. Now, Roberts Smith barrister has already stated that the possibility of appeal, because this is really damning. As I said, this is really damning. Now, the report airs, so today, it's reported that he's resigned from his position. So remember, he was in Bali when this happened. He didn't even go to the court. He did not face anybody. He wasn't there. He sent his lawyers instead, which, it's out of the country. Apparently he's been on a nice holiday. So he resigns from Seven. So it says that he's resigned from Seven West Media a day after the judge found. Well, they've come out and said it. I'm going to say that he possibly did. The finding was made in the context of a civil case. Yep. So the billionaire chairman of Seven, Kerry Stokes, financed Robert Smith's legal costs in the high-profile trial after appointing him as general manager of Seven Queensland in 2015. The managing director and chief executive of Seven, James Warburton, told staff Friday that Robert Smith had offered his resignation. As you're aware, the judgment in the defamation case was handed down yesterday, where Warburton said in an email seen by Guardian Australia. Ben has been on leave while the case was running and today offered his resignation, which we accepted. We thank Ben to his commitment to Seven and wish him all the best. The ex-soldier stood aside from his job in Queensland 2021 to focus on the trial. He was supported in court by the network's commercial director, Bruce McWilliam, who attended the court and gave evidence. On Thursday, Stokes said he'd not spoken to Robert Smith, but the judgment does not accord with the man I know. I know this will be particularly hard for Ben, who's always maintained his innocence, said Stokes after the verdict. That his fellow soldiers have disagreed with each other, this outcome will be the source of additional grief. Stokes also had backed Robert Smith financially and publicly, insisting the employee was as innocent as recently as last year. And at Seven West Media annual general meeting, Stokes said Ben Robert Smith is innocent and deserves legal representation, and that scumbag journalists should be held to account. And quote me on that. During the defamation trial, one of the SAS witnesses for Robert Smith told the court Seven was paying their legal fees, which was at odds with Seven's claim that the soldiers' evidence about the source of payments was not correct. A Seven spokesperson later clarified the witness fees were being reimbursed by another arm of the Stokes empire. Fees were being reimbursed by ACE, the chair's private company. The spokesperson said the chairman felt it was unfair that soldiers were being brought before the inquiry without representation. Robert Smith took out a loan believed to be $2 million from Stokes to fund his defamation case. He now appears certain to lose his Victoria Cross medal that he surrendered as collateral. Nine investigative reporter Nick McKenzie on Thursday criticised Stokes for bankrolling Robert Smith. This is a media proprietor who should believe in journalism, yet he's waging a war against investigative journalism. Now, that's interesting. How does it look good that one media, that Seven, who is in competition with Nine, is funding the case for one of their employees? I think there's it's a bit iffy. So there, as I said, there are calls today. There are calls today for him to be stripped of his Victoria Cross. And there's even calls today for him to lose his to have his uniform taken out of the war memorial, because remember, he's the most highly decorated soldier, and now that looks like that's not going to happen. They're going to, they're going to have to make a decision about that. So the other, I don't know, Vedandra, there is something fishy about it. I mean, look, he was in Afghanistan. There've been allegations about war crimes, particularly from Australia. They've been hanging around for a while. They just weren't able to pin down what he did. If the witnesses are to be believed, it is quite possible. But at the end, I mean, this was a civil trial, so it's I don't know. No one really knows what's going to happen from now, whether now the military now has to go and investigate. There was a report called the Brereton Report that investigated war crimes and did find that some of the stuff did actually happen. So, yay, hello! We're talking about Ben Roberts Smith at the moment, Peter. How are you going? So, he wasn't heard from. Nobody had heard from him. So, it was announced on Friday that he'd resigned from his role. So, here is the judge here. This is the...
1. The applicant's conduct and actions on the mission to W108 as found means that the respondents have established the substantial truth of imputations 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 9. 2. The applicant's conduct and actions on the mission to Darwin as found means that the respondents have established the substantial truth of imputations 1.
Remember, we're only talking about substantial truth. It's on the balance of probability. We're not talking about beyond reasonable doubt. Now, this finished in July, and it's taken until now for the decision to come through. I have no doubt that he has gone through this case and really looked at it seriously. I agree, Peter, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something more, there's more to this.
1, 2 and 3. 3. The applicant's conduct and actions on the mission to Chinatu as found means that the respondents have established the substantial truth of imputations 2 and 3. 4. The respondents have not established the particulars of truth with respect to the mission to Sai Chow on the 20th of October 2012. 5. The respondents have not established the particulars of truth with respect to the mission to Faisal on the 5th of November 2012. 6. With respect to the alleged bullying of person 1, the respondents have established the substantial truth of...
So everybody was given... Hello, Bruce. Everyone was given... The fact that the defence will look over the findings before they publish this. That's correct. And as I said, the government wants to look over the findings. The thing that really... they were all named as persons 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm looking for Peter and then saw... yeah, it's without... Yeah, sorry. It's without a lawyer. Without the... Yeah.
Imputation 12. 7, with respect to the alleged unlawful assaults on pucks, and this relates to imputations 10, 11 and 14, the respondents have established the substantial truth of those imputations. 8, with respect to the alleged act of domestic violence and imputations 7 and 8, I am not satisfied that person 17's evidence is sufficiently reliable to form the basis of a finding that the assault occurred and that imputations 7 and 8 are substantially true. However, I consider that the respondents have made out the defence of contextual truth with respect to those imputations. 9, With respect to the alleged threat to Trooper J and imputation 13, I am not satisfied that the evidence is sufficiently clear to support a threat of the type advanced by the respondents, and they have shown the imputation to be substantially true. However, I am satisfied that the respondents have made out a defence of contextual truth with respect to that imputation. In light of my conclusions, each proceeding must be dismissed. At this point, I would ordinarily publish my reasons, but I understand that the Commonwealth has application to make in that regard.
Yes, contextual truth. Contextual truth is used as a backup defence generally. So it means that they've proven all the really bad stuff that's happened, that that even though they haven't been able to prove the smaller stuff, because the big stuff's been proven, the little stuff's not going to harm the reputation any further. Hope that makes sense. So it's essentially where so if for example you've got 3 or 4 points and you can prove point 1 and 2 really well, but you don't know that you can prove point 3 and 4, you'll talk about contextual truth. And so that means that they'll say, well, you've proven points 1 and 2, you've pled contextual truth in 3 and 4. Well, 1 and 2 have been proven and they're really, really bad things. And yeah, so it just means in the context of the allegations. So, for example, I think he talked about the DV being a contextual truth, that while they didn't prove that they were substantially true, if you look at the context of what they have proven, some of the other allegations, like the guy on the cliff and the amputee, they are actually worse for the reputation than the DV allegations. So that's really what contextual truth is. If you look in context of everything, it's not really going to happen. It's not going to ruin his reputation anymore. So, New York Times called it the Australian trial of the century, while BBC splashed the judgment on its homepage. Washington Post asserted, in the minds of some Australians, Roberts Smith embodied the values of courage and sacrifice set by Australian soldiers since World War I. But according to the judgment and many others, that now has changed. So talking about substantial truth. And remember, we're only talking about substantial truth. We haven't got the beyond reasonable doubt. It's only on probability. Australia's most decorated living soldier has been suing 3 newspapers and 3 journalists. And they've referred to it as he's kicked an own goal. His bid to restore his reputation backfired, and it backfired badly. Because some of the stuff that came out in court was horrific. I could not imagine what it was like to have to sit there and listen to that. And they've said that quite a few people have been re-traumatized. So outside the court, his barrister, Arthur Moses, SC, said only that his team would consider the lengthy judgment and that his honour had delivered and look at the issues relating to the appeal. Chris Masters and Nick McKenzie, the investigative journalists who were also named, said they never wanted to go to court. But enough brave men in the SAS stood up and told the truth, and for them I am just so relieved that this case has been vindicated what they did. Masters said that he was massively relieved. It's just not morally wrong for civilians to be executed in Afghanistan. It was also strategically wrong too. It hurt the war effort, and a lot of soldiers knew that. The Australian Centre for International Justice and Afghanistan Human Rights and Democracy released a joint statement that said it remains that today, together with whistleblowers, survivors, and human rights defenders from Afghanistan, investigative journalists have helped set in motion several processes to reckon with Australia's legacy of military engagement in Afghanistan, ranging from criminal investigations to reform of military education and training on the laws of armed conflict. Now, it's unclear what will happen to the tributes to Roberts Smith's service at the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. Federal Greens MP David Shoebridge has already called for them to be removed. While the civil case is wrapped up, media law expert Justin Quill said a criminal follow-up is unlikely. No, I don't think so either, Peter. I don't think that he thought that way, and I don't think his lawyers would have thought that way, because I would highly believe that if they thought that this was going to be the outcome, they would have just settled. We've seen many politicians settle because they didn't want their laundry to get out. However, some of the witnesses did say that they were threatened regarding their testimony. So hence why it became pseudonyms and secrecy because of that fact. All types of allegations have come out. So if there were threats about their testimonies, allegedly, and they've still testified, then I guess they have to be credible. So it says, no doubt the authorities will be looking at the evidence given in this case, but it won't influence the decision to charge or not to charge Robert Smith or any other soldier. The Australian Special Air Service Association described the judgment as disappointing. This is a very proud regiment. It's one of the finest units in Australia's order battle. It's a very traumatic day for a group of soldiers, 99% whom did nothing more than fight brave for the country. So, yeah. So it's definitely, I mean, this has definitely been talked about for days and days. This is going to be talked about for a while. Sort of makes you think that stolen valor is not a good thing, because someone is always there to contradict. Yes. But see, his ex-wife gave evidence against him, and there was allegations that that he'd sent letters of threat, and that he'd had an affair and everything. That there was explosive-laden text messages that he'd sent his ex-wife, and then person 17 apparently was the affair partner and had said that exactly, Vedanta. Person 17 said about how she had to take 2 pregnancy tests in front of him because she got pregnant, and then she eventually miscarried, and he needed to make sure that she miscarried, and then once she'd miscarried, he made her take some more pregnancy tests. So he has his some of the stuff that came out in evidence was not very good. Now, also an acting MP who was also in the same regiment at that time, a federal MP, also had to give evidence, was subpoenaed to give evidence, and had to talk about how, and so there was allegations that he didn't like him, and he said, well, no, it wasn't that I didn't like him. we just didn't get on. And so it was a horrible case. Bruce, I wonder if this is why Bruce settled. Settling's always the way to go if you can. Because this is what can happen. I mean, the media is saying it's a win for them. Brittany and Bruce, yes. Yes, probably. Yeah, possibly. Because you don't want all your dirty linen going out, or you don't want all your dirty laundry being pulled out, do you? Now, they've also said there's also allegation. I've also heard a story today. Yes. There's also that they reckon that he'll go bankrupt now. So the papers won't ever get their money back. So it says the War Memorial to keep Ben Roberts Smith's display as he quits Channel 7. So again, this is a bit controversial. So the Australian War Memorial leaving place displays lionising Ben Roberts Smith uniform, medals and portrait after federal court found he was a murderer. A disgraced soldier resigned from his position. So there is a video, how did we get here? Bit like, where did we come from? Okay. So Kim Beazley, chairman of the War Memorial Council, said it would look at ways to add context to the exhibit. The memorial acknowledged the gravity of the decision in the Ben Roberts defamation case and its broader impact on all involved in the Australian community. He noted that the memorial's job was to remember and understand Australia's experience at war, including how it conducted and what consequences it had. We are carefully considering the additional content and context to be included in these displays. The Greens called on the memorial to be removed, while international law professor argues they should be recontextualised to show that alongside the soldiers' bravery, he also committed horrific acts. At a Shangri-La Dialogue Security Forum in Singapore on Friday night, Defence Force Chief Angus Campbell was asked about Robert Smith and the court ruling he committed war crimes during the panel experience. That's a question that is very legitimate back in Australia, he said, speaking alongside military officials from United States, Japan and Philippines. I think that's the conversation I set forth a state engaging with, and quite rightly, but not for here. So here they've broken down each of the decisions here. And as I said, the stuff that he said that he found were true were very damning. So one, that he murdered an unarmed and defenseless Afghan civilian by kicking him off a cliff. He broke moral and legal rules of military engagement and is therefore a criminal. He disgraced his country and army by his conduct in Afghanistan. He committed murder by pressuring a newly deployed soldier to execute an elderly unarmed Afghan. He committed murder by machine gunning a man with a prosthetic leg. He's so callous and humane that he took the prosthetic leg back to Australia and encouraged his soldiers to use it as a novelty beer drinking vessel. That disgusts me, I have to say. What they couldn't prove, he committed an act of DV against a woman in a hotel in Canberra. He's a hypocrite who publicly supported Rosie Batty, domestic violence campaigner, when in fact in private he abused the woman. They proved that a deputy commander of a 2009 patrol he acquiesced in the execution of an unarmed Afghan by a junior trooper. In 2010, he bashed an unarmed Afghan in the face with fists and in the stomach with his knee and alarmed 2 patrol commanders to the extent they ordered him to back off. A patrol commander in 2012, he authorized the assault of an unarmed Afghan who was being held in custody. He engaged in a campaign of bullying against small and quiet soldier called Trooper M, which include threats of violence. They could not prove. He threatened to report Trooper J to the International Criminal Court for firing at civilians unless he provided an account of a friendly fire incident that was consistent with his. And he assaulted an unarmed Afghan in 2012. So where they found the newspapers had not established the truth of the imputations, he found the contextual truth, which means Robert Smith's reputation suffered no damage from these imputations because he has been found to be a murderer, a bully, and a war criminal. There you go. They explained it. So he'd been on leave right throughout the case from Channel 7. So, and Robert Smith's exit from 7 will help the network head off any advertising backlash from brands wary of being indirectly associated with the man the court has found disgraced the nation. So a co-founder of the ethical ad buying firm Bendicus Maria said he questioned Stokes' judgment, but did not forecast advertisers making changes. I found it interesting that BRS's defense was pointing the finger saying this is about industry competition at 9, when it was Stokes who was financing the whole thing against his rivals. See, that's what I found to be most egregious of this case. Yes, I'm wondering that Pete, I'm wondering that. But he said it was hard to make ethical distinctions between some ad destinations. Is he Stokes, Wilson, Zuckerberg, Weston, Murdoch? I don't know. So, but they agree, employing a murderer, you just can't do that. Everybody knows. 7's share price was up about 4% on Friday afternoon, trading at 40 cents a share. But yes, it's very interesting. So they all knew this about him. Yes, they did. And not only, they funded, and 7 funded his case against his rivals. See, I always questioned that. That never, ever, ever made any sense to me. But things are starting to fall into place, aren't they, Peter? Things are starting to fall into place. There's been okay. Oh, hello, Doom. How are you? Dom, how are you? We just... Well, it's going to be very interesting what the fallout's going to be. I mean, I just don't know. Hello, Will. But remember, he can appeal, but they have to find an error in law. So they're going to have to prove that I have a Twitter to go out when you... Cool. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna get to KJ soon. I'm gonna also put a timestamp so people don't have to sit through all of this other stuff. But it's just a very... And look, this is already not going to be monetized because I've used all the horrible words talking about Robert Smith. If Kerry Stokes wants to waste money, he can give some to me. They've estimated that it could cost up to $40 million. Well, that the case cost about $40 million. So that's a lot of money, and now he's unemployed. So And I mean, if we want to switch to KJ just for a minute for her defamation case, I mean, that is this type of detail that the media went into against Robert Smith is seriously what she would need to go into, in my opinion, in her case. Because they went hard with the truth. They got everybody. They called in witnesses, and they were able to protect sources because we're talking about military. So, in terms of national security and military secrets, everyone was under a pseudonym, and so because only select people knew who those people really were, they could talk freely. Let's talk contextual truth, KJ. Yes. I don't know that she could do. See, I still don't know how she could prove. I think the lady who RS is showing for defamation dumped a whole ton of stuff to KJ. I reckon so too, Will. I think that is correct. Wow, have you seen? All right, we are now going to get on to KJ just for now. So 52 minutes. For those of you that just hit the timestamp, so 52 minutes, we have just gone past our last topic. We are onto our new topic. Has anyone seen the big tantrum that has been occurring on social media over this docuseries that she was not a part of? Because the tantrums are it's like a child. KJ learnt nothing from Swanson using her against. Well, that's true. Now, and also, don't forget that the time for discovery ended at the end of May. So now, if everything should have been supplied, and remember, where there were disagreements, they would have to go to court and have the court rule on what if it can be protected or not. Funny Friday off YouTube is in the doc, from what I've heard. Yes, I've heard that too. Apparently, a lot of someone even said they saw a clip of Backwoods Barbie. I mean, you imagine you've got all these other people, in this docuseries, but her. KJ's too infamous, toxic, and reliable. Well, according to her, Will, she was the one that gave Amazon all her sources. Has KJ ever discovered that China isn't Russia? Did anyone notice that I found the short of the girl in the coffee cup? I've put that back. Made that. Yes. Well, let's have a look. She's gone on a little bit of a rant because now she's saying it's not a very good docuseries. It's not supposed to be about the Duggars, from my understanding. It's supposed to be on the IBLP, but apparently there's not enough Duggars in it. She says, watching shiny, happy people now. I was laughing about the coffee cup. We need the uterus back again. I'll need to find that clip. Took me. Do you know how long it took to find the coffee cup one though? It says, now watching shiny, happy people dug your family secrets. It wasn't. It was just called. If you love your audience, you'll record your own commentary track to listen to while watching this. And she goes, oh, yeah. Now, she also has been struck by Amazon because she released a video using their pictures, and she's I'm going to just remove this, and she has just gone crazy. Yes, it wasn't called the Nuggets. That's correct. So this says, Olivia Christ told me on a phone call, we don't paint John Holt as the best historian. He's not painted as honest. When I confronted her about Jim Holt's abuse of his children, do not be fooled. Jim Holt is an abusive monster. He's a liar. He lies, and he abused his wife and children. They aren't good witnesses. Jill would have testified, but Bobby couldn't help herself and insert herself. Jim couldn't help himself. They were all out for vengeance and nothing else, period. Bobby may be a victim of Jim, but she's a monster. Neither of them helped these kids, and they married their daughter to a pedophile. Amazon tried to take my channel down for commenting on this series and claimed I took their content. I have investigated this cult for 5 years. YouTube sided with me. They said their claims that I copied their content was false. Amazon, you don't own the story of the IPLP or the victims. I handed you my sources and gave you the phone numbers. When your producers contacted me, they knew nothing about the IPLP. I handed you Derek Dillard for this series. I warned you about Jim Holt. You dumped me because Jim Holt told you I was a liar. I told you Holt was an abuser. I'm done. And because Fundy Fridays hates Morgan and Paul, they get in this document series and add nothing. These are my opinions and my thoughts. Freedom of speech. Oh, and then we get Fundy Fridays did not edit the material they were interviewed. You don't know what else they said contributed was not included. Don't same everyone just because you are bitter. This is beyond reprehensible to treat you like this, Katie. Amazon has a long history of theft of creators and taking credit for the creation of products they stole from others. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Oh dear. There you go. How was that for a tantrum? So this is it. Amazon still believes that the content infringes out. This video is from an unreleased title, meaning it is not currently available to the public. The entirety of this video shown is copyrighted and directly impacts marketing from the series, as well as above and below the line business concerns. There is not applicable exception to DMCA, as again, this asset is not in the public domain. And even if it were, such exceptions are not applicable in the case, as it infringes the code. Shame on you, Amazon. Ben Miller, you don't own the IBLP story. Because it's my story. I had it first. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I didn't reproduce your content. I've covered this cult for 5 years. You don't own that IBLP story. Your behavior is why the victims of Gothard didn't participate in your series. You tried to take down my channel over my own research and commenting on your series. You could have had me for your series. You know nothing about the IBLP when I spoke to you. I warned you about Jim Holt. You picked sources that had platforms. Victims of Gothard didn't want anything to do with you for a reason. Jane Doe 3 is the only victim featured. Other victims were not happy with her involvement. So she's not happy with the victim. Chad Gallagher still reps Jim Bob Duggan. Note to all of you. This means all the kids are making content that is shared on Duggar website are under Jim Bob's control. Gallagher is in charge of all content they publish. Jim Bob still has authority. That includes Joy and Jessa. Sorry if that offends, but that's the truth. So there you go. How's that for a tantrum? How many times has she said that? How many times did she say that it was her? How many times did she say that they didn't own the IBLP and it was her story? You could have had me. Oh dear, what a tantrum, hey? I didn't think, has she been on YouTube for 5 years? I didn't realize that she was doing her channel. I didn't think no one owns a story unless it's a personal one. Well, that's correct. Well, and if Jane Doe number 3 had a story to tell, then she has a right to tell her story. If she was a victim and she's telling her story, who has a right to diminish her story? She was... Oh, hello, Suzanne. Depends who owns the story. Yeah. Suzanne would be able to tell us. Has she been covering the Duggars for 5 years? Because I believe that you would have been covering the Duggars for around that time. I own my own. KJ does not own mine, even if she was. Well, that's correct. But why does she have to just keep telling everybody that she's essentially telling everybody that they didn't use her? She's trying to imply that Amazon stole all her sources and has set up their own narrative. I covered the Duggars much longer, yeah. Because I would have thought if you were advocating for people and you were advocating and you were for the victims, you would be embracing this docuseries and really encouraging people to watch it, to have an understanding of what it's like, so that people are educated and aware. But what she's done is she's trying to cause a divide there. I wrote for Patheos and Douglas about since 2009. Yeah, see, I thought that. Yeah. Now KJ wants to say her cult was like Hillsong. Pretty sure her pastor wasn't Justin Bieber. Yeah. But I just find it's just... She's taken most of my Duggar rumors from many years back. Right. See, I don't know. She could be using this to say, look, I've been reporting on this, and this part of the documentary proves this, lines up with what this person has said and this person has said, and yes, this is the issue here, or this proves that. but she hasn't. Instead, she's had a big tantrum about the fact that she was rejected by them. Used. Well, what I find to be interesting, because she just talks about how, how she used to talk about them having babies all the time. Didn't the young one, Claire, and who did she marry? They haven't had a kid yet. Wouldn't it be funny if her ranting about Amazon leads to another lawsuit? Well, the other thing is, I mean, her blurting the fact that they've and it's interesting that they've said that the video is unreleased. They did not, so I'm guessing it is sensationalism, right? Because to me, what they've said to her, I think remember, you've got to talk about what the normal ordinary person would think. And I would have said to them, I'm really sorry. Oh, I forgot, I would have just apologized and said, look, because they've said it's an unreleased video. They've already, have a look at the wording of this, right? It says, it impacts both the marketing I managed to kick myself out. I'm clever, aren't I? Oh dear, how did I do that? Yes, and it's also supposed to be released on 2nd June. Well, it is the 2nd of June here, Dom. So she's sharing, but it says here that it's not currently available to the public, and the entirety of the video shown is copyrighted and directly impacts marketing for the series, as well as above and the below the line business concerns. Would you go so far as it is, would they, oh really? I think that's the case. They realised how prominently released. Would they say it was tortious interference of business? Just out of interest? I used to do music contests, whatever I tuned in, even if unused, became owned by the label. Yeah. So, and then someone says, and then I'm just going to turn off this. See, these are the comments. This can get her into trouble here, in my opinion. Sisson says, that's insane. I am boycotting the documentary now. I was excited to watch it, but believe your word over theirs. It seems they are trying to cover up their missteps. The things you warned them about, rather than admitting the truth you've been speaking. I have been a follower of yours since like 2019, and I always trust you. I don't need a documentary when I have you. So if people are saying they're going to boycott the docuseries and it flops, is this proof of interference. I can feel a lawsuit coming on. Lots of love, KJ Sock. I know. Oh dear. That is the type of stuff she's got to be careful of. You just got to laugh at these tantrums, don't you? What I'm finding... Yeah, but if she's so great as an investigative reporter, why can't she get people to work with her? Someone says here, Amazon picked up this topic for the money. Docuseries brings in big bucks. And then she says, I heard they were working on it for 4 years. False. They picked up in 2021 when Josh's trial was over. They knew nothing. Now you are into your degree. A small summary of my opinion on what? This? My opinion is I wouldn't mess with Amazon. That's my opinion. She says, I can verify anytime you like that I have credited you and linked you for the articles I wrote that you posted first over a number of years. Amazon could have done that. See, I'm going to boycott the documentary. Jenny's great. I think you should Fundy Fridays out of this. Well, now we know why Jill has a book coming out. This is one documentary I do not want to watch. Thanks for your reporting. Thanks for your reporting. This documentary is nothing new. Oh, view hidden comments. Amazon has more lawyers than KJ's Graham Cracker. Yes. Well, it'd be like taking on Google, really. So, do you think Jill and Derek were paid to do the docuseries? And apparently it's a no. But yeah, see, they're all saying that they're going to boycott the series. Amazon lawyers, screenshot away. Yeah. Well, apparently she's happy about Jill's book. Oh, I wonder whether I can watch it because I've got Amazon Prime. I don't have many of the streaming services, but I've got Amazon Prime. I might have to see if I can watch it. So maybe I have to give my own view on it. She hates. Oh, of course she hates Jill. But she's put here. There was something here about. What was it here? And which I heard that she actually, before Jill Duggar finally wrote her book, the description is literally amazing. And this will be 100% a tell-all with honesty and transparency. Yes, I've got Amazon Prime. So yes, I'm going to have to go look at it. I should be studying for an exam, but I'm sure watching to see what all of this is about, to see whether it's worth the tantrum. Might be better. Jill and Derek knew a normal life wasn't possible for them. As the star on the popular TLC reality show 19 Kids and Counting, Jill grew up in front of viewers who were fascinated by her family's way of life. She was the responsible second daughter of Jim Bob and Michelle's 19 kids, always with a baby on her hip. And happy to wear the modest ankle-length dresses with throat-high necklines. She didn't protest the strict model patriarchy that her family followed, which declares that men are superior, that women are expected to be wives and mothers are discouraged from attaining a higher education, and that parental authority over their children continues well into adulthood once they're married. But as Jill got older and married Derek, they embarked on their own lives. The red flags became too obvious to ignore. For as long as they could, Jill and Derek tried to be obedient family members. They weren't willing to rock the boat, but now they're raising a family of their own, and they're done with the secrets. Oh, she just copied and pasted it. Thanks to time, tears, therapy, and blessings from God, they have the strength to share their journey. There's a remarkable story of the power of the truth and his moving example of how to find healing through honesty. Proud of Jill and Derek. I thought she hated Derek. Oops, she hated him. How do you think this will be different from Ginger's? And she said, oh, how different do you think this will be from Ginger's? 100%. Well, at least she did remember you. Well, and the other thing is, Will, here is the original. You can see where she's cut and pasted it. And it's interesting because it says, counting the cost, a memoir, Jill Duggar with Derek Dillard and Craig Belace. Now that's the writer, isn't it? Like, honestly, Jill will have a better seller if she's not praising Jim Bob, states the other. I thought I heard backwards. Yes, I heard backwards Barbie's voice was in there. I did hear backwards Barbie's voice was in the video. Is that why KJ's having the tantrum? See, it's funny how everyone says she posted the news today and not one sibling congratulated her. Do you know, I don't message, I don't put all of that stuff over social media. Like my dad's birthday, I sent him a message. I didn't put it all over social media. Yeah. Yeah, someone said to me that her voice is in the documentary, and I reckon that would have made her spiral. Could you imagine that? Yeah, I've had a few people. There was a few people in the that I've seen on Twitter talk about backwards Barbie being that they thought it was her in the documentary, her voice. And Fundy Friday's there too. And Fundy Friday, I think, posted about being in the documentary. But of course, we know that KJ is not happy about that. Did you see her claiming that Amazon tried to? Yes. Yes, that is hilarious that they're trying to take her channel. If they wanted to take her channel, they would. And I mean, if TLC wanted to take her channel, they could. I mean, she's done enough. And the other thing is, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time she's taken. Didn't she take stuff from the Browns' Patreon as well? The Brown family's Patreon. Crazy Fundies, Morgan and Paul. Okay. Yeah. So it looks like a lot of people. Were you asked to be in it, Suzanne? It seems to be that a lot of people that they had in there, but for some and so she's mad because everyone's in there but her, but she's apparently the only source of Duggar information, allegedly. She is very quiet on the Browns. You are correct. She did put something up. What did she put up on it? What did she put on Instagram? I saw something about the Browns. Oh, really? You think she had something to do with that? Yeah. No, she hasn't either, has she? She's gone back onto. Oh yeah, that's right. It was just after her. I never contacted the LA Clippers. She posted pictures of Savannah's graduation, and then about the Hillsong documentary. In fact, she hasn't talked about that at all. That would have been. I haven't seen it. I believe it. I'm done with filming docos, seeing my info used and not being credited. Yeah. Definitely interesting. Right. Oh, you knew Gwen Shamblin? Right, okay. Without a lawyer, so KJ kicked out of on this one. 7M. Duggars. Well, it's not really a Duggars documentary. As such. Ah! So someone's just posted this, and this is from With Balls on Twitter. Has just shared this. It says, someone says, I wasted 20 minutes of my life. But she posted this without ever naming a source for the quote. I don't know who makes all the videos on YouTube to send it to. I'm not a Duggar fan at all, but Jim, Bob, and Michelle in no way said Derek and Jill are dead to us. How in the ever-loving hell does she get away with this? And OMG, she's back on Facebook crying about how she should have been in this documentary now. Oh, really? She couldn't pronounce the Duggars' names? It says Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar have spoken, and the liberal media, along with Jim and Derek, are lying. What? Yes. That sentence did not make any sense. Um. Now, apparently, a backwards Barbie was used for one sentence. And the other thing that people are saying is that Jill doesn't want what happened to her as a child talked about. And yet somebody keeps talking about it. So why would she, if she is friendly with, if she was respecting Jill like she says, or respectful, or really wanting to support victims, and apparently this has come out in this docuseries. So, someone's just saying that Jill said she doesn't want it talked about. So if Jill doesn't want it talked about, what gives KJ the right to keep talking about it? If the victims are saying we just want to move on with our lives, we want to put it behind us, whose right is it for KJ to keep making videos of it? She called the Doogers. She did too. I remember that. I remember watching an early video where she called them the Doogers. Oh. The Doogers. All right. Jill was crying, clearly crushed by what happened on her. Yes. I mean, that would have upset KJ. Oh, I think Llama Girls just shared the video of her saying the Doogers and that she hates Derek. So, you know. Oh, here we go. Is this it? Let's see what this says. This is what I think it is. It looks like it could be it. I'm going to have to go shortly too. I need to get some sleep. I've got to do some study. I should really study, shouldn't I? Okay, so this is, I think, this is Llama Girls.
I'm pretty sure her uterus is shriveled up and dead. So I was like, dude, let's talk about what the Duggars are doing, or the Doogers, or whatever you guys. And then that's the other thing. If I don't pronounce something perfectly, you get mad at me. If it's Dooger or Duggar, I really don't care. Like, these people are so silly to me. I love judging the Duggars or the Doogers or whatever you want to call them, and all their dumb crotch fruit. They have so many crotch loin fruits that it's hard to even keep up with them. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm missing one of the crotch fruits. I don't have anything to tell you about Josiah, other than he's still gay and he and his wife are still pregnant. All right.
What? Can you believe that? She said he's still gay and they're still pregnant. What? Wow. Well, that's what I'm saying, Peter. I'm saying it's not really something that I'd be messing with if I was her. But see, she thinks she's untouchable. She unfortunately thinks she's untouchable, and that's a big problem. Thanks to Llama Girl for sharing that too, by the way, because that's helpful. All right. Of course. We all know that you wouldn't do that if you were an ally. 19, 20, 21, 22, yeah. So, anyway. It's just very... And apparently she's back friends with Amy and Deanna. Her tattered flag? Maybe. Maybe. Oh, dear. Oh, well, I better, yeah, get on and do some more. I think, don't even know what, oh, yeah, I'm doing constitutional law at the moment. No, sorry. No, I'm studying property law at the moment. I've got to do constitutional. I've got constitutional law exam on Tuesday. And then I've got workplace law Monday, constitutional law Tuesday. They're my 2 for this week. I'm a bit annoyed because I've got to go do face-to-face. I do off-campus learning. Got to go sit face-to-face exam, in-person exam. All right, which is fine. But in a room with other people. But then I just lost my train of thought. I must be getting old. Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Have a good safe trip. I've got to go. So it's a supervisor. I've got to go sit in a classroom to log on to a computer to do my exam on a computer that is being monitored. Last year we did the same thing, but we had to install software onto our computers so that they could monitor us. So it's just sucky. But anyway. And COVID's not an excuse to miss the exams either, which I think is very highly unfair, considering we're in flu season. Do you? Property. Oh, yeah, constitutional law. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed sports law. I did a whole pile of stuff on the concussion laws, on concussion, and how they and how that all works with concussion protocols and the changes to that. But we'll see how we go. So anyway, I want to thank you for watching. It's been a while since I've been on. If you could do me a favor and hit the like button, maybe subscribe. Subscribing would be really good. Yes, if you could do that. I'll be back. So, oh, that's right. That's what I was going to say. I also have to miss 2 days of work for my exams. So, and I'm not happy about that. I have to miss work, which is paid, which is what I really didn't want, which is why I studied online, because that way I can work and study. But they've just taken away my ability to work because, anyway, yeah, I'll get off that rant. But yes, so I want to thank you all for joining me today. We had to deal with Ben Roberts Smith and that defamation case, which is bizarre. I think it's going to get crazier. And Katie Joy, it was my cult first rant. Talk about entitled, hey? Anyway, I'm going to I'll probably go to bed and try and see if I can watch this docuseries to see what all her fuss is about. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you